The family cabin felt both familiar and foreign as I stepped inside, the scent of pine mingling with the warmth from the fireplace. It was supposed to be a joyful gathering, a chance to reconnect with my husband, Jack, and his family. But as I unpacked my bags, a knot tightened in my stomach. Jack had been distant lately, distracted by work and his own thoughts. I could feel the space growing between us. Dinner that evening was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Everyone gathered around the table, sharing stories and memories from past vacations. My eyes drifted towards my father-in-law, Robert. He sat across from me, his smile genuine yet tinged with something deeper that I couldn't quite place. As Jack raised his glass for a toast, I noticed Robert's gaze linger on me just a moment too long. The air shifted slightly, an unspoken tension hung between us. After dinner, we all moved to the cozy living room. The fire crackled softly as we settled into our seats. Jack was engaged in conversation with his sister while I found myself next to Robert on the couch. He leaned in slightly to share a joke about an old family trip, and our shoulders brushed together. The warmth of his presence sent an unexpected thrill through me. I glanced at Jack. He was preoccupied with his phone again, scrolling through emails instead of being present. As the evening wore on, storm clouds gathered outside, casting shadows across the room. The wind howled against the cabin walls, creating an atmosphere that felt both intimate and isolating. Suddenly, the power flickered and went out completely. The room plunged into darkness except for the flickering light of the fireplace. Laughter turned into murmurs as everyone fumbled for their phones to use as flashlights. In that moment of chaos, Robert turned towards me, his voice low but clear above the storm outside. "Let's step outside for a moment," he suggested quietly. I hesitated but felt drawn to him despite my better judgment. We stepped onto the porch where rain began to patter against the wooden planks beneath our feet. The world outside felt alive with energy, nature's fury mirrored my own internal conflict. "It's beautiful out here," Robert remarked as he leaned against the railing beside me. "Yeah," I replied softly, feeling vulnerable yet exhilarated by our shared solitude away from prying eyes. As we stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, I became acutely aware of how close we were standing together, too close for mere family comfort. A sudden gust of wind blew past us. It sent chills down my spine but also ignited something within me that had long been dormant. Just then, Jack's voice called out from inside the cabin, breaking our moment like glass shattering on tile. "Where are you two?" he asked with a hint of annoyance lacing his tone. I stepped back instinctively while Robert straightened up like someone caught off guard. "Just getting some fresh air," I replied quickly before retreating back indoors. The warmth of the cabin enveloped me again as I tried to shake off what had just happened outside, an attraction that felt forbidden yet intoxicatingly real amidst my growing discontent in marriage. Later that night as everyone settled into their rooms for bed, Jack remained glued to his phone while I lay awake staring at the ceiling above me, a familiar sight that suddenly felt alien after everything that had transpired over dinner and on that porch. The storm raged on outside, thunder rolled in tandem with my racing heartbeats as thoughts spiraled through my mind, thoughts about Jack's constant distractions versus Robert's unexpected attention towards me during this getaway meant to strengthen family bonds. In those restless hours before sleep finally claimed me, one thing became clear. This vacation would not be just another ordinary gathering. It would test not only familial ties but also challenge emotions long buried beneath layers of routine life. And so it began, a journey fraught with uncharted waters where desires could no longer remain hidden beneath surface-level pleasantries nor ignored amidst familial obligations. With dawn came clarity but also uncertainty about what lay ahead amidst looming storms both outside and within our tightly knit family dynamic. A revelation waiting just beyond reach like thunder rumbling far away yet ever present in our lives together under one roof. What would happen next? Would this newfound tension lead us down paths best left unexplored? Or would we find ourselves swept away by forces beyond our control? As breakfast preparations commenced downstairs amid laughter echoing through hallways filled with memories past, the storm inside me brewed stronger than ever before. The family gathered around the dining table, the aroma of bacon and eggs filling the air. I sat quietly, stealing glances at my father-in-law, Robert. He seemed lost in thought, his eyes occasionally meeting mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. My husband, Jack, was engrossed in his phone, oblivious to the tension building between us. "Can you pass the toast?" I asked Jack, breaking the silence. He nodded without looking up. I felt a pang of guilt as I remembered our whispered secrets from last night. The kiss lingered in my mind like a forbidden fruit, sweet yet dangerous. After breakfast, we decided to go for a family walk by the lake. The sun peeked through the clouds as we strolled along the path lined with wildflowers. I found myself walking beside Robert, our shoulders brushing occasionally. Each touch ignited a spark within me that I couldn't ignore. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he remarked casually, glancing at me with a smile that made my heart race. "Yes," I replied softly, trying to maintain composure. "Perfect for a family outing." As we reached a secluded spot by the water's edge, he turned to me with sincerity in his eyes. "I've missed this place since Martha passed." His voice was thick with emotion. "I can only imagine," I said gently. "It must be hard." We shared stories about our pasts, his memories of Martha and my dreams that felt stifled in my current life. Suddenly, he leaned closer and whispered something that sent chills through me. "You remind me of her." In that moment, everything around us faded away. It was just him and me against the world. Without thinking, our lips met, nos besamos, and it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I pulled back quickly as reality crashed back in. "What are we doing?" I stammered. He looked conflicted but determined. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "But it feels right." Before I could respond, Jack called out from a distance, his voice snapping us back to reality. "Hey! You two coming? Let's not keep everyone waiting." We exchanged a glance filled with unspoken words before hastily rejoining the group. The laughter of our family felt distant now, an invisible barrier had formed between Robert and me. Later that evening during dinner, tensions ran high as Jack raised his glass for a toast to family unity. His words echoed in my mind as I forced myself to smile and raise my glass too. "To love and togetherness," he proclaimed cheerfully. "Cheers," everyone echoed back except for Robert and me. Our eyes met briefly before we both looked away awkwardly. After dinner concluded amidst laughter and chatter about trivial matters, I sought solace by stepping outside onto the porch overlooking the lake under a blanket of stars. The cool breeze brushed against my skin as guilt washed over me like waves crashing against rocks. Robert joined me moments later without saying a word. He stood beside me silently as we gazed at the shimmering water reflecting moonlight, a perfect metaphor for our hidden emotions beneath calm surfaces. "I shouldn't have kissed you," he finally broke the silence. My heart raced at his admission but also felt relief at his honesty. Neither should I have let it happen. "We can't keep pretending this doesn't exist." His voice was steady yet filled with longing. Just then, laughter erupted from inside, the sound of family games night beginning without us drew closer like an uninvited guest interrupting an intimate conversation. "Let's go back," I suggested reluctantly but knew deep down that returning would only complicate things further between us. As we re-entered the cabin filled with joy and competition among relatives playing board games scattered across tables, my heart sank knowing how easily secrets could unravel amidst such warmth. My thoughts spiraled into chaos until suddenly a loud crash echoed from behind us where Jack had knocked over a game piece while reaching for another drink on the table nearby. A momentary distraction amidst rising tensions threatening to expose everything hidden beneath layers of familial love intertwined with betrayal. "Watch it," someone shouted amidst laughter while others turned their attention towards us momentarily before returning focus back onto their games again without noticing anything amiss between Robert and myself. Yet something shifted within me irrevocably after tonight's events unfolded so unexpectedly. The storm outside had calmed, but inside, a tempest brewed stronger than ever before, threatening to consume everything familiar if left unchecked. The evening air felt heavy with unspoken words as I stepped outside, seeking solace by the lake. The water shimmered under the moonlight, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling in my heart. I replayed the kiss with Robert in my mind, how our lips met, nuestros labios se encontraron, igniting a flame I thought long extinguished. Guilt washed over me like cold water, reminding me of the vows I had made to Jack. As I leaned against a weathered wooden post, memories of happier times with Jack flickered through my mind. Family outings, laughter echoing in the air, those moments now seemed distant and out of reach. I had tried to connect with Jack, but he was always distracted by work. Just last week, he had missed our anniversary dinner because of a last-minute meeting. Each time he prioritized his job over our relationship, it felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. "Are you all right?" Robert's voice broke through my thoughts. He stood a few feet away, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, turning away from him. But my heart raced at his presence. He stepped closer, and for a moment, the world around us faded into nothingness. "You don't seem fine." I sighed deeply, feeling an overwhelming urge to confide in him but holding back. "It's just, everything feels complicated right now." Robert nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine as if looking for answers hidden beneath layers of confusion and guilt. "I understand more than you think." That struck me hard. It was true that we both carried burdens of loss and unfulfilled desires. We had both lost someone precious, his late wife, and my connection with Jack, and perhaps that's what drew us together amidst this chaotic family gathering. "Do you miss her?" I asked quietly. "Every day," he admitted softly. "But talking about her helps." I hesitated before sharing my own feelings about Jack's absence in our relationship. Instead, I found myself leaning into Robert's warmth as we shared stories about our loved ones lost too soon. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind us. A fallen branch from a nearby tree startled us both back to reality. Panic surged through me as we exchanged glances filled with unspoken fear. "We should go back," I urged. "Just a moment longer," he said gently, capturing my gaze once more. We lingered there under the stars until the weight of our surroundings pressed down on me again. The risk was escalating each moment we spent together alone. It was only a matter of time before someone noticed our closeness. As we walked back toward the cabin hand in hand, an innocent gesture that felt dangerously intimate, I caught sight of Jack through the window talking animatedly with other family members. The sight tugged at my heartstrings. He seemed so carefree compared to how I felt inside. Once inside, laughter filled the room as everyone engaged in games and jokes around the table. Yet beneath that laughter lay an undercurrent of tension that only Robert and I could sense between us. "Let's team up for this round," he suggested during one game while trying to maintain casualness despite our shared secret lingering between us like an uninvited guest. "Okay," I replied hesitantly but couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling creeping into my thoughts about what we were doing together and where it might lead us next. As we played on, Robert leaned closer to whisper something funny into my ear, a joke about one of Jack's goofy moments during dinner last night, and for an instant everything felt right again until reality crashed down around us once more when Jack suddenly turned his attention toward us. "What's going on over here?" he asked playfully but with an edge that hinted at suspicion lingering beneath his smile. Caught off guard by his question and realizing how easily things could unravel if not careful made me uneasy inside. Yet Robert maintained composure beside me as if nothing was amiss between us despite all those shared glances earlier today which had sparked something deeper than mere attraction. As night deepened outside and games continued into laughter-filled hours ahead, I knew one thing: maintaining this fragile balance would require more than just luck or chance. It would take careful planning against unforeseen circumstances lurking around every corner waiting for their moment to strike. The next day, we planned a family hike, hoping the fresh air would ease the tension. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. Robert walked beside me, our shoulders brushing occasionally, sending shivers down my spine. His presence was both comforting and unsettling. I wanted to connect with him, yet guilt gnawed at me for even thinking it. As we climbed the trail, laughter echoed around us from the kids. My husband, Jack, was up front, chatting animatedly with his brother. I glanced at Robert, who caught my eye and smiled softly. It was a simple gesture, but it felt charged with unspoken words. We shared a quiet moment as we paused to admire the view. The mountains loomed majestically in the distance. It felt surreal being so close yet so far from what we both desired. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Robert said, breaking the silence. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of our secret hung heavily between us. As we resumed walking, I noticed Jack looking back at us occasionally. His brow furrowed slightly as if sensing something amiss. I tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. After all, nothing had happened yet. But as we reached a secluded spot on the trail where others had stopped to take pictures, Robert leaned closer to me. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I nodded cautiously. We stepped away from the group into a small clearing surrounded by trees. "What is it?" I asked. "I can't stop thinking about last night," he admitted, his voice low but intense. "We spent night together in ways that felt right." The confession hung in the air like an electric charge. My heart raced as conflicting emotions swirled inside me, fear of discovery and an undeniable thrill at what had transpired between us. Suddenly, we heard voices approaching from behind us. Panic surged through me as I glanced over my shoulder to see Jack and his brother walking toward us with curious expressions. "Hey! What are you two up to?" Jack called out playfully. "Just taking in the view," I replied quickly, forcing a smile that felt strained. Robert cleared his throat and stepped back into view just in time to mask any hint of intimacy that might have lingered between us. "Yeah, beautiful out here," he added casually. Relief washed over me as they seemed satisfied with our answer and continued on their way down the path ahead of us. But I knew this wouldn't last long. Our secret felt more precarious than ever now that tensions were rising within our family dynamics. Later that evening during dinner preparations back at the cabin, everyone buzzed with excitement about playing games afterward. Jack seemed distracted again. He kept glancing at his phone while stirring a pot on the stove. "Everything okay?" I asked him gently. "Just work stuff," he replied absent-mindedly before turning back to his task without elaborating further. While setting up for game night later on in the cozy game room filled with board games and laughter echoing off wooden walls adorned with family photos, I couldn't shake off Robert's earlier words or how close we had come to getting caught today out on that trail. As we settled into teams for charades, a game filled with competitive spirits, the energy shifted when Robert and I ended up paired together against Jack and his brother again. Our chemistry was undeniable. Every glance exchanged between us ignited something deeper within me despite knowing how wrong this all was. With each round played out amidst laughter and playful banter, Jack's frustration grew palpable as he struggled against our unexpected synergy during one particular challenge where Robert guided my movements effortlessly while trying not to give too much away. "Come on. You two are cheating," Jack exclaimed jokingly but clearly irritated by our success together. "We're just good teammates," I shot back light-heartedly though guilt gnawed at my insides once more as Robert winked at me across the table. a gesture that sent warmth flooding through me despite everything else happening around us. But then came an unexpected twist. One of the game pieces went missing right before our final round began, an obvious sign something was off among all players present. Tension rose sharply when Jack announced loudly enough for everyone else nearby to hear, "This is ridiculous. Someone must have taken it." A heavy silence fell over the room while everyone exchanged uneasy glances before looking back towards Robert and me, sensing perhaps something unusual about how closely we had been working together throughout this evening's festivities. I could feel my heart racing as uncertainty filled every corner of my mind. Was this just bad luck? Or had someone figured out what lay beneath our surface interactions? The stakes were rising rapidly now. The game night continued, but tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Robert and I exchanged furtive glances, each one heavy with unspoken words. My husband, Jack, sat across the table, his brow furrowed as he struggled to maintain his focus on the game. The laughter of our family felt distant, muffled by the weight of my secret. "Can you help me with this?" Robert leaned closer, pointing at the board. His breath brushed against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. I nodded, fighting to keep my composure. As we worked together, I could feel the familiar thrill of our connection pulsing beneath the surface. "Nice teamwork," Jack remarked dryly, his eyes narrowing slightly as he watched us. "Maybe you two should form a team for everything." The sarcasm stung more than I expected. I forced a smile and looked away from Jack's gaze. In that moment of distraction, I won the round thanks to Robert's strategic advice. Cheers erupted around the table as family members congratulated me. But beneath the surface celebration lay an undercurrent of anxiety that twisted in my stomach. Was it just a game? Or had we crossed another line? As everyone laughed and shared stories, I noticed a game piece missing from the board, a small token that had become crucial in our ongoing competition. "Where's that piece?" Jack asked sharply, scanning the table for any sign of it. "I thought you had it," I replied too quickly, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. Robert's expression shifted subtly. He seemed to understand what was at stake here. "I'll help you look for it," he said casually but with an intensity that made my heart race again. We slipped away from the group under the pretense of searching for the missing piece. The hallway felt eerily quiet as we moved away from prying eyes. "What if they find out?" I whispered urgently. "We can't let them," Robert replied firmly but softly, his hand brushing against mine as we searched through cabinets and drawers. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the game room again, a reminder of what we were risking. "We should head back," I said reluctantly. Just then, Jack called out from behind us. "Are you two okay? What's taking so long?" His voice was laced with suspicion. "We're just checking in here." I called back quickly, trying to mask my panic. As we returned to the room, Robert and I shared a glance filled with both excitement and dread. The evening continued without incident until a family member mentioned plans for another gathering tomorrow at a local market known for its fresh produce and vibrant atmosphere. "Let's make it a family outing," someone suggested enthusiastically. Jack nodded but then turned to me with concern etched on his face. "You'll be okay with all of them? You've seemed distracted tonight." "I'm fine," I assured him too quickly again. After everyone settled down for bed later that night, sleep eluded me as thoughts spiraled in my mind, about Robert and about Jack's growing frustration over our distance. In those quiet hours alone in my room, guilt washed over me like an unwanted tide. The next day arrived bright and sunny, however, unease lingered like dark clouds ready to burst overhead. At breakfast, everyone chatted excitedly about their plans for the market visit while I picked at my food. "Are you coming along?" Jack asked pointedly when he noticed my lack of appetite. "Yes, of course," I replied hesitantly before forcing myself to smile at him despite everything swirling inside me. At the market later that day, filled with colors and scents, I tried to immerse myself in family activities, tasting fruits from local vendors and laughing at silly trinkets displayed on stalls. Yet amidst all this joy stood Robert beside me, his presence both comforting and dangerous at once. "Look at those avocados," he exclaimed suddenly while pointing towards a stand overflowing with ripe green fruit. "They do look perfect." My heart raced as he leaned closer again. Our shoulders brushed together briefly before pulling away just enough not to draw attention from anyone else nearby. As we walked further down an aisle lined with fresh flowers bursting into bloom around us, each scent more intoxicating than last, I felt drawn towards him like moths are drawn towards light despite knowing full well where such paths might lead us both. Then suddenly amidst laughter ringing out nearby came an unexpected sound. A phone ringing loudly in Robert's pocket broke through our momentary blissful distraction, causing both hearts to race anew, not just from excitement but fear too. He fumbled through his pockets before pulling out his phone. The screen lit up displaying an unknown number alongside familiar names listed underneath. My breath caught in my throat as realization hit hard. Someone new. "Who is it?" I whispered urgently while glancing around nervously, expecting someone might overhear us or worse yet see something they weren't meant to. "It's nothing important," Robert replied hastily while glancing over his shoulder nervously before silencing it quickly, but not before catching sight of who had called. My heart sank as dread settled heavily within me. Could this be someone who had been watching? A friend perhaps? Or worse still, someone who would expose everything? A sudden chill ran down my spine. It felt like time itself stopped momentarily while uncertainty loomed larger than life overhead, threatening everything we'd built together so far. With one glance exchanged between us, the kind filled not only with fear but also understanding, I knew deep down things were changing rapidly now. Nothing would ever be quite as simple again after today. The phone's shrill ring shattered the stillness of our hidden sanctuary. My heart raced as I glanced at my father-in-law, who wore a mask of concern. We had just found a moment of solace, tucked away from the prying eyes of family. The evening air was thick with unspoken words and shared secrets. I reached for the phone, my fingers trembling slightly. "Hello?" I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. It was my husband, Jack, his tone casual but laced with an undercurrent of suspicion. "Hey, where are you? Everyone's looking for you." "I'm just outside," I replied, glancing at my father-in-law. His eyes were locked onto mine, filled with a mixture of worry and longing. I needed some fresh air. "Okay, hurry back. We're about to start the next game." Jack hung up without waiting for my response. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. The evening had promised so much more than board games and small talk. "We need to go back," I said softly, breaking the spell between us. But as we stood up, he reached for my hand, his grip firm yet gentle. "Just a few more minutes," he urged. The weight of his words hung in the air like an unspoken agreement. We stepped into the dim light filtering through the trees surrounding us. The family cabin loomed ahead, filled with laughter and warmth that felt increasingly distant from our reality. As we approached, I could hear the competitive banter spilling out into the night. Inside, Jack's voice cut through the noise as he called out to me. "There you are." I was worried. He wrapped an arm around me protectively, oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. "Just taking a breather," I said lightly while stealing a glance at my father-in-law across the room. He was engaged in conversation with other family members but shot me a knowing look that made my heart race again. The game resumed with renewed energy as family members rallied around tables strewn with cards and tokens. The atmosphere was charged, everyone was focused on winning while I felt increasingly trapped in this charade of normalcy. "Are you okay?" Jack asked quietly during a lull in conversation. His brow furrowed slightly as he studied me closely. "You seem off tonight." "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Just then, laughter erupted from across the room as someone made an outrageous claim about their gaming skills. I tried to shake off Jack's concern but couldn't help feeling suffocated by expectations, both from him and myself. My mind drifted back to our secret moments together and how they contrasted sharply with this facade of family unity. As rounds continued late into the night, an unexpected interruption came when one of Jack's cousins knocked over a stack of game pieces scattered across the table. Everyone groaned in mock dismay while others scrambled to help clean up. In that moment of chaos, I caught sight of my father-in-law slipping out onto the porch alone, a silent invitation that tugged at me irresistibly. "I'll be right back," I murmured to Jack before following him outside. The night air wrapped around us like a cloak as we stood side by side on the porch steps overlooking darkened woods beyond. "We can't keep doing this," he murmured quietly but firmly. "I know," I replied, painfully aware that every moment spent together carried heavy consequences we could no longer ignore. Suddenly his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket, an intrusion into our fragile bubble, and he cursed under his breath before pulling it out to check who it was. "It's just work," he said dismissively, but something in his voice told me otherwise. There was urgency behind those words that hinted at deeper issues awaiting resolution within our lives apart from this tangled web we'd woven together. "I don't want to hide anymore," I blurted out, suddenly feeling emboldened by both fear and desire for clarity amidst confusion surrounding us now more than ever before. His expression shifted instantly, caught between relief and dread, as if understanding what lay ahead might shatter everything we had built thus far. "I don't want to hide anymore," I blurted out, suddenly feeling emboldened by both fear and desire for clarity amidst confusion surrounding us now more than ever before. His expression shifted instantly, caught between relief and dread, as if understanding what lay ahead might shatter everything we had built thus far. Jack's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route from this moment, but there was none. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I could hear the distant laughter of family members echoing through the cabin. "Elizabeth, we can't just throw everything away," he said, his voice low yet firm. I could sense the weight of his words. He was trying to hold on to something precious amidst the chaos. My heart raced as I thought about our family, about the life we had created together. But the connection I felt with his father was undeniable. As we stood there, a sudden knock on the door jolted us both back to reality. "Dinner is ready," a cheerful voice called out from outside. We exchanged a glance filled with unspoken tension, and I knew we couldn't continue this conversation now. "Let's go," I whispered, forcing a smile despite my swirling emotions. Dinner was a blur of laughter and chatter that night. Everyone seemed so carefree, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. My father-in-law caught my eye across the table several times, each glance igniting that familiar spark within me. He smiled softly as if reassuring me that our secret was safe for now. After dinner, we moved to the living room where a game night awaited us. The atmosphere shifted slightly as competitive spirits ignited among family members. My husband seemed distracted, often checking his phone while trying to engage in conversation with others. It became increasingly clear that he was preoccupied with work matters rather than family connections. "Why don't you join us?" I asked Jack during a brief moment alone in the kitchen while everyone else settled into their games. "I'd rather be here with you," he replied quietly, leaning closer as if sharing a secret only meant for my ears. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the living room as someone won a round of cards, causing me to jump back into reality. "We should head back," I suggested hastily. As we returned to the group, I overheard whispers behind me, two relatives exchanging glances filled with suspicion directed at us. Their words were muffled but unmistakable. "Have you noticed how close they've become?" A chill ran down my spine at their insinuations. The evening dragged on until everyone began to disperse for bed. I felt restless. Sleep would not come easily tonight knowing what lay ahead. In my mind, thoughts spiraled around my relationship with Jack's father and how it had grown beyond mere attraction into something deeper yet fraught with complications. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. After breakfast, family members began planning a day trip to visit a local market known for its fresh produce and artisan goods. The idea of spending more time together felt both thrilling and terrifying. "Let's go together," Jack suggested as we walked toward our cars parked outside. I hesitated but nodded in agreement. It would be easier to maintain our facade in public amongst family than face our growing feelings alone behind closed doors. At the market, vibrant colors surrounded us, fresh fruits piled high alongside handmade crafts that drew attention from passers-by. We wandered through stalls filled with friendly vendors who greeted us warmly. It felt like an idyllic scene from a postcard. "We should get some strawberries," Jack said casually as he picked up a pint from one vendor's stand. I smiled at him while feeling an overwhelming sense of normalcy wash over me, but it didn't last long when I spotted one of my relatives across the way again whispering with another family member while casting furtive glances in our direction. "Do you think they know?" I asked Jack quietly as we moved further down the aisle away from prying eyes. "I hope not," he replied solemnly but squeezed my hand reassuringly before letting go too quickly as if afraid someone might notice our closeness again. After purchasing some fruits and vegetables, we headed back toward the car when suddenly another relative approached us directly, an older cousin who had always been perceptive about family dynamics. "Is everything okay between you two?" she asked pointedly without any preamble or hesitation. My heart raced at her directness. Uncertainty flooded over me like ice water splashing against skin on a cold day. Was this how it would end? Would she expose our secret? "Yes. Of course," I replied too quickly while trying desperately to maintain composure under her scrutinizing gaze. Jack shifted nervously beside me but managed only a weak smile in response before she walked away shaking her head slightly, a gesture that lingered long after she disappeared into the crowd around us. Later that evening back at home after everyone retired for bed once again, it felt like an endless cycle. I found myself pacing alone in my room contemplating what had transpired throughout this trip thus far. Moments shared too intimate yet overshadowed by fear of discovery looming above like dark clouds threatening rain any minute now. Just then came another knock on my door, this time softer yet still insistent enough for me to answer cautiously. "Who is it?" "It's me," Jack whispered through cracks between wood panels separating us now, a sound both soothing yet alarming all at once. I opened the door, half expecting to find Jack with a concerned look on his face. Instead, he stood there, eyes wide and searching. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing," I replied too quickly. The guilt from my secret relationship with his father weighed heavily on my shoulders. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter the room. The tension in the air felt suffocating as I tried to maintain my composure. "Are you sure?" Jack pressed, crossing his arms defensively. "You've been distant lately." I felt a pang of regret at how true that was. The weight of my actions was becoming unbearable. "I'm just tired from all the activities," I offered weakly. He seemed unconvinced but nodded slowly, accepting my excuse for the moment. I needed time to think about how to handle this situation without causing more damage. Later that evening, we all gathered for dinner at the cabin. Laughter filled the room as family stories were shared, but I found it increasingly difficult to engage. My eyes kept drifting toward my father-in-law, who sat across from me with an easy smile that made my heart race. Memories of our stolen moments flooded back, our quiet conversations by the lake and the night we spent together. As dessert was served, Jack raised his glass for a toast. "To family," he said, glancing at me with an expression that held both love and confusion. "May we always stay close." Everyone echoed their agreement while I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. After dinner, I excused myself under the pretense of needing fresh air. Outside, darkness enveloped me like a comforting blanket as I wandered toward the lake's edge. The stillness was interrupted by footsteps behind me. It was my father-in-law. "Mind if I join you?" he asked softly. The warmth in his voice sent shivers down my spine as he approached cautiously. "Of course," I replied, trying to sound casual despite the racing of my heart. We stood in silence for a moment before he broke it by reminiscing about time spent here with his late wife. "She loved this place," he said wistfully. "It always brought us closer together." His words struck a chord deep within me. Our shared grief had forged an unexpected bond between us. "I can see why," I replied quietly, glancing at him sideways. "It's beautiful here." He turned to look at me then, and for a heartbeat, it felt like we were alone in our own world, a world where nothing else mattered except our connection. Suddenly, laughter erupted from inside the cabin, jolting us back to reality. We exchanged knowing glances that spoke volumes about what lay beneath our surface interactions. The next day began with family activities planned around town, a market visit followed by lunch at a local cafe known for its famous paella. As we strolled through stalls filled with vibrant produce and handmade crafts, Jack held my hand tightly as if trying to anchor me amidst rising tides of uncertainty. "Are you okay?" he asked again when he noticed how distracted I had become while chatting with his father nearby. "Yes," I lied again as we stopped to admire some handmade pottery. But guilt gnawed at me like an insatiable beast. Every moment spent with Jack felt tainted by what transpired between his father and me. That evening brought another family gathering around the fireplace, a tradition meant to foster connection among us all but one that now felt like walking on eggshells for me. My father-in-law took a seat next to me while Jack settled across from us. Tension crackled in the air as stories were shared yet again. Amidst laughter and warmth radiating from flames crackling before us came another unexpected power outage. The lights flickered out abruptly, plunging us into darkness just as someone shouted out in surprise. "What happened?" Jack's voice cut through confusion surrounding us while laughter turned into murmurs of concern among family members huddled close together seeking comfort in each other's presence. "We'll figure it out," his father assured everyone calmly before leaning closer toward me in half-lighted shadows cast by flickering flames still visible through windows outside, an intimacy that sent shivers down my spine despite everything else happening around us. In those moments surrounded by uncertainty and familial warmth intertwined with secrets hidden beneath layers of affection exchanged between my husband's father and myself, I realized how fragile everything truly was. One slip could unravel everything we'd built so far. As the warmth of the fire flickered around us, I felt a wave of panic wash over me. The walls seemed to close in, and I could hardly breathe. My father-in-law's presence was both comforting and terrifying. He leaned closer, his voice low. "We need to be careful." I nodded, but inside, my heart raced. The weight of our secret felt heavier than ever. The next morning brought a sense of dread. I could hear my husband bustling about in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for everyone. He was excited about the surprise trip he had planned for us, a romantic getaway that would surely complicate everything. I forced a smile as he entered the living room with a plate of pancakes. "I can't wait for us to spend some quality time together," he said, oblivious to the turmoil brewing within me. Later that day, while helping clean up after lunch, I received an anonymous message on my phone. My heart sank as I read the words, "I know what you've been doing." The sender was unknown, but the implications were clear. Panic surged through me again. How had someone found out? I glanced around at my family, their laughter echoing in the background, and felt utterly trapped. I needed to confront my father-in-law about this revelation before it spiraled out of control. When we finally found a moment alone in the garden later that afternoon, I whispered urgently, "Someone knows about us." His face paled slightly as he absorbed my words. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. The gravity of our situation hung heavy between us. "I received a message," I confessed, my voice trembling. "They're threatening to expose everything." His expression hardened as he processed this new reality. "We have to figure this out before it gets worse," he replied firmly. The thought of losing everything made my stomach churn. Just then, my husband called from inside the house, breaking our tense moment. "Hey! Come inside. I've got something special planned." His cheerful voice felt like a dagger to my heart. We exchanged worried glances before heading back into the house together. As we gathered around the dining table for dinner that evening, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread hanging over me like a storm cloud. My husband began discussing our upcoming trip in detail, where we would go and what we would do together, completely unaware of the chaos brewing beneath the surface. "Are you excited?" he asked me with genuine enthusiasm as he reached for my hand across the table. I forced myself to smile and nod along with his excitement while beneath it all, fear gnawed at me like an insatiable beast. After dinner, while everyone else settled into their evening routines, I slipped outside for some fresh air. The cool night breeze did little to calm my racing heart as I paced back and forth on the porch steps. Just then, my phone buzzed again, a reply from whoever had sent that ominous message earlier: "Meet me tomorrow at noon by the lake if you want this kept quiet." I stood frozen for a moment as anxiety coursed through me like wildfire. Meeting this person could expose everything or offer a chance to salvage what remained of my secret life with my father-in-law. But what if it was a trap? Suddenly torn between fear and desperation for resolution, I knew one thing was clear: this couldn't continue much longer without consequences. When morning came and sunlight streamed into our cabin once more, it felt like both a blessing and a curse, a new day filled with potential yet overshadowed by uncertainty looming ahead of me like dark clouds on an otherwise bright horizon. As we prepared for our day trip later that afternoon, my husband buzzing with excitement, I made up excuses in hopes of buying myself some time to think things through before confronting either him or my father-in-law again about what lay ahead. But just as we were about to leave for our surprise getaway destination, an idyllic spot near Lake Serenity, the doorbell rang unexpectedly loud against our cozy atmosphere filled with laughter and chatter from family members gathered inside. My heart sank when I opened it only to find one familiar face standing there, the tipster who had sent me that chilling message earlier, Sarah, a close family friend who had witnessed too much during this vacation already, and now seemed determined to unravel everything before it spiraled even further out of control. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly but firmly as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, a storm brewing behind her eyes that mirrored mine perfectly amidst all these tangled emotions swirling around us now. I closed the door behind Sarah, my pulse racing. The air felt heavy with unspoken words, and I struggled to find my voice. "Why are you here?" I managed to ask, attempting to keep my composure. She crossed her arms, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "I know what's been happening between you and Jack," she said bluntly. "You have to stop this before it's too late." Her words hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down chaos. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "It's not what you think," I replied, though deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. The moments we shared weren't just fleeting, they had become something deeper than I ever intended. "Really?" "Because it looks like a lot more than just innocent moments," she shot back, her tone sharp. "You're risking everything, your marriage, your family." I wanted to defend myself, but the truth was undeniable. My husband had been distant, consumed by work and his own struggles. In contrast, Jack had offered me warmth and understanding that I craved desperately. "Please, Sarah," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "You can't tell anyone about this." Her silence was deafening as she weighed her options. "I won't say anything yet," she finally replied cautiously. "But you need to figure out what you want before this blows up in your face." With that ultimatum hanging over me like a guillotine, I stepped back into the living room where Jack sat with his head buried in his phone. The flickering light from the screen illuminated his features but failed to bridge the emotional gap between us. "Everything okay?" he asked without looking up. His casual tone felt like a slap in the face after Sarah's visit. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just talking about family stuff." He nodded absent-mindedly as if he was only half present in our conversation. As I watched him scroll through his messages, guilt gnawed at me again. How could I continue this charade? Yet every time I thought of ending things with Jack, memories of our stolen moments flooded back, his laughter echoing through the cabin during games night or those quiet conversations by the lake where we shared our fears and dreams. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, jolting me from my thoughts. Jack rose to answer it while I stood frozen in place. My heart raced again as dread filled my chest. Who could it be at this hour? When he opened the door, it was my sister-in-law with an armful of baked goods and an inquisitive look on her face. "I thought you might want some treats," she exclaimed cheerfully before stepping inside without invitation. "Thanks," I mumbled as she placed the goodies on the table. Her presence felt intrusive now. All I wanted was space to breathe and think clearly about everything happening around me. Jack returned to sit beside me again as if nothing had changed despite our chaotic reality unfolding around us. He picked up a cookie and smiled at his sister while stealing glances at me, his expression unreadable. "You two look cozy," she remarked playfully, raising an eyebrow at us both. A nervous laugh escaped my lips while Jack simply shrugged it off with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes either. As we chatted about mundane topics, the weather and upcoming family events, I felt trapped between two worlds, one where secrets festered beneath surface-level pleasantries and another where honesty threatened everything I held dear. After what felt like hours of small talk filled with tension masked by laughter, my sister-in-law finally took her leave with promises to return soon for dinner preparations tomorrow night. Once alone again with Jack, silence enveloped us once more until he broke it unexpectedly. "What's really going on?" His gaze pierced through me like an arrow aimed directly at my heart. "I told you, it's nothing," I insisted weakly but couldn't shake off that feeling of dread creeping back into my mind as he studied me closely for signs of deceit or guilt written across my face. He sighed heavily before leaning back against the couch cushions, his frustration palpable now, and pulled out his phone again as if searching for distraction from whatever was brewing between us both emotionally right now. Suddenly realizing how much longer this charade could last unnerved me deeply. Every moment spent together felt like walking on thin ice ready to crack beneath our feet at any second without warning. Then came another knock on the door, a firm knock that echoed through our quiet cabin like thunder rolling across an open field during stormy weather. And before either of us could react further, the door swung open revealing not just another family member but someone unexpected who would change everything. Our mother-in-law stood there with an expression that indicated she sensed something amiss already.